Hi and welcome back to StellaFlix. This video is not going to show you how to make the best portraits on earth, but it will show you how to produce a good, competent head and shoulders portrait pretty quickly and with the minimum amount of disruption to your clients. It's great doing shoots in your own studio space when everyone has time to spare, but if you're working on location, sometimes you find yourself under pressure to shoot and be gone. You just have to get in and get out in no time flat. If you've ever been in that situation and got a bit stressed, I think you might find this video useful. Stella's rule of ones. So, this is for photographers who are new to using off-camera speedlights on location for portraiture. Or perhaps you might want to make a simple pop-up studio at an event. It works beautifully for one person, but also for two people if they squeeze up together. So for the purpose of this video, I'm making these assumptions. Firstly, you already know how to work your camera and set its controls, and the same applies for your speedlights. Secondly, that you have two light stands with speedlight adapters and matching speedlight heads, a pair of them, a radio trigger, a white or silver brolly, and optionally a reflector. And maybe even a pop-up backdrop or a clean white wall to use instead. Kind of essential really. Speedlights must have a guide number of at least 58, typical of the Pixapro lithium-ion 580 Mark IIs or the Godox or Nissan equivalents, etc. If you're using Canon, Nikon, Olympus or similar speedlights, you will need the manufacturer's transmitter. I once had to shoot half a dozen clean white background pictures in a 15-minute coffee break in the middle of a meeting. I had to get it done and be gone, ready for the meeting to continue. With the setup and breakdown times, that's less than 1 minute a person. There was certainly no time to experiment with any lighting effects or to mess about with flash meter readings. I had to know exactly where to put the lights and exactly what settings to use on the speedlights and the camera. How did I do it? Well, firstly I used an easy setup plus Stella's rule of ones, because 1 is the easiest number to remember when you're rushing to set up a really fast portrait shoot. Stella's rule of ones, rule number 1, before you leave home, do your pre-shoot checks. Preset the equipment before you turn up. What does that involve? Well, think of driving a car. It's important that you check the doors are shut, the seat's in the right position, and there isn't the gear lever and the handbrake are doing what they should be. Only then is it safe to start up and move. It's the same with photography. No one wants to watch you fiddling about with your camera and trying to work out how your speedlights work. So have all that done first. Neutralise the camera. It's very important, first of all, to set the camera to M mode, that's manual mode. All camera, trigger and flash batteries are charged. Your cards are cleared and checked and set to shoot JPEGs plus RAW. Your camera is set to flash colour balance and single shot mode. Have the camera already fitted with a portrait lens. I find the 24 to 105mm zoom lens is just perfect for portraits. Have them on the same channel. Guess what? Channel 1. And ready grouped to A and B. A is your key light, B is your background. Have the speedlights pre-fitted with stand adapters ready to use. You can just take them out of the bag, straight onto the stand. Have the radio trigger already on top of the camera, in the bag. And finally, carry no confusing junk. If you like to have backup kit, keep it separately in another bag, not underfoot. Set the speedlights to 1:1 power, maximum power and maximum wide zoom. Set the camera to 100 ISO. Set the shutter to 1/100th of a second. Set the aperture to all the ones, f11. Use a focal length of, you guessed it, about 100mm. When you set the setup, take one head and place it 1 metre up from the floor and 1 metre away from the backdrop, facing backwards. So we're going to place the model's chair about a metre in front of the light. Model. Thank you, model.
You're welcome.
An umbrella with a flash behind it. Nice and high up, about a metre. The front edge of this, a metre from the model's face. I'm going to make sure that's turned on. Both flashes are full power. Both flashes are zoomed right out as far as they'll go. And now we'll take a photograph and see what happens. Before I take a photograph, I'm going to do the test frame. So I've turned my slave trigger right off so it won't fire the flashes. So I'm going to take a photograph of the model, and I should get, sure enough, a completely black frame. When I turn on, it should fire the flashes. If I wasn't getting a black frame, there'll be something wrong with the camera setting. So now I'll just do a test exposure with the trigger to make sure it's working. It does. And now we'll take some pictures. And we have a result. Okay. Rule of ones, it works. If you want a faded horizon effect, just angle the background flash downwards a little. Using a grey backdrop will increase that effect. The best lighting position is loop or Rembrandt lighting for men, and high central and soft for women. So if you can arrange it, separate the genders and rearrange your key light to each group. You may like to add a reflector, it's optional, and great if you have an assistant to hold it. But the point of using a soft white brolly is that it's actually quite hard to go wrong. In an average white room, it's easy to get wraparound light, so don't worry if you don't use a reflector, it will probably still work. Okay, this setup should get you pretty close to the centre of the exposure ballpark. Of course, the actual exposure will depend on the power of your flash and how much of that is lost by the brolly. So you might find 200 or 400 turns out to be your best ISO setting. You can break the rule of ones if you have to. But that's just one quick adjustment, and a lot swifter than fiddling about with flash powers or the aperture, which may fix the exposure but change depth of field. Using this setup should give you a decent result with a clean white background. Stella's rule of ones.
Now I do have to make a small confession. It turned out that my 100 ISO setting was a little bit dark. So I changed it to 200, which added just enough brightness.
So that's Stella's rule of ones for off-camera flash, for when the brain lock-up kicks in halfway through the shoot. It's just intended as a starting point, so by all means take it, refine it, make it your own. But you should find that not only does it speed things up, but it also gives you less stuff to carry. It should fit into 2 medium-sized bags or even a single shopping trolley. You might ask, why not use your camera's TTL exposure system? Well, of course you can, but TTL metering depends on the information sent by your camera's metering system, which not only varies from one system to the next, but more importantly can change the flash exposure slightly if the subject moves or if the composition changes. And that means inconsistent exposures. Your background can be affected too, with the white either becoming light grey or possibly blowing out. Not good if you want them all to look the same. If you have more than just a handful of people to photograph, you'll find yourself spending a lot of time in post-production trying to clean them all up. That's where using manual really scores. It remains consistent. The only problem with manual exposure is knowing where to start and what settings to use. So I hope this video has helped. Okay, I'm planning to be back quite soon, so until then, take care out there. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. Bye. Few outtakes. Really hard to see. Can't even see it. Some exaggerated enunciation. Why can't I see it? Hopeless. But it also means that, what does it mean, Stella? But also it means that you less cut. I think we're there. All over the bloody